Okay, councillors, I ask that you stand and join me for a Karakia, please. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together here today for our first official council meeting. God, thank you that you are always walking alongside us, and please help us to never forget that it's a privilege to serve our community, and help us to always keep in mind the well-being of our people, our land and our water. We ask it in your name. Amen. Well, the warmest welcome to everyone to our first official council meeting today. I do want to acknowledge my lovely colleagues. It is wonderful that we've been on a journey for the last 3 weeks, getting our feet under the table, and today we hit the ground running. So thank you also for your great attitude, your enthusiasm, and I look forward to walking alongside and working with each one of you. I do want to acknowledge staff as well who helped us through this induction process. Thank you for that. And I do want to welcome our visitors here today, and we'll acknowledge some other visitors later. So without further ado, I open our meeting, and I also welcome Councillor Tupara on Zoom. He'll be joining us from Zoom today. Any apologies, councillors? No apologies. Well done. One big tick. We move on to our declarations of interest. Anyone have a declaration for this morning? If so, you can also raise it when we get to the specific item. If not, I ask that all councillors move to page 5, where we are going to take a look at our minutes. What we are after is to make sure that it's a true and accurate record of what happened at that meeting. So take a look. Is someone willing to move? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Cranston. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at our action sheet, which is on page 8. Are there any questions or queries on the updated? I see there are some due dates that have been overshot, but that was explained. That is still going on. Any questions on our action sheet? If not, I move us on just to glance over our governance work plan, which just tells us what happens at what meeting. And you can see what is on today's agenda. Okay, then no leave of absence. We do not have acknowledgements and tributes that were raised with me. We do not have public input or petitions. We have no extraordinary business, no notices of motion, no adjourned business. So I take everyone to page 14. This is our first paper of the day. And these are straight, as you can see from our whole agenda today, it's more transactional. And so this is a committee recommendation to council. And this was just an update, a recommendation made by the Audit and Risk Committee. I'm happy to move this. Seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. Any questions or queries? If not, all in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. So councillors, the next 2 items that we are going to cover are our standing orders and our code of conduct. And as we have discussed before, we will be adopting these, and then in the new year, we will be thoroughly working through it and making sure they are fit for purpose for our needs. So at this stage, we will adopt them, and then staff will come with a date to us when we will workshop and make sure these standing orders as well as code of conduct is fit for purpose for us. So I take us to page 17, which is the adoption of our standing orders. Moved by Councillor Wharehinga, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any questions or queries in regards to this? You have a question, Councillor Cranston? Yep.
And it might be dealing with the next time through. Just wondering about the situation where we have delegations to a meeting and they're delegating on a situation that's a recommendation which we're dealing with an hour or so later. Just wondering about whether that's the best way. I know we've got a requirement of having 3 or 4 days to analyse notes and that, but when people come and delegate on something and we're making a decision an hour later, I have seen sort of situations changed on the fact of that delegation. We're just concerned about the ability to fully consider the delegation and whether that could be covered off in standard orders or should be covered off in standing orders.
That's something we will take a look at. Yep, so we will, when we review, we will do that as well. Can I ask that every councillor move their nameplate so that I can see it? Otherwise, I will be struggling a little bit today. Awesome. So Mrs. Con, that will be included as well when we go. Thank you. Councillor Pahuru Huriwai.
Your worship, I just want to please make note once we do go through the standing orders in the new year and code of conduct that we make note that we include tikanga Māori alongside that. We have that part of the discussion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Ria.
Morena tātou, just the inclusion also of the Matariki public holiday.
Thank you for that. I can see that we're going to have a lovely discussion. If there are no further questions or queries, I put it to the floor. I have a mover, Councillor Wharehinga, a seconder, Councillor Robinson. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you for that. So the same is for our code of conduct. I take you to page 90. And you can see also the Local Government Commission template was attached to the back just to give us some guidance. So it is the same going forward, that we will adopt it today, but then in the new year, we will review that and make sure it's fit for purpose for us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ria. Seconded by Councillor Gregory. Any questions or queries? If not, I'll put it to the floor. Moved by Councillor Ria, seconded by Councillor Gregory. All in favour, contrary, carried. You are like the A team. Page 154, and I do want to acknowledge every single councillor today. I ask everyone to reach out to me and let me know what they're passionate about, what they want to be part of, what committees they want to serve on. And I want to tell you that I am really blown away by everyone's enthusiasm, everyone's willingness to accommodate someone else as well. So I just want to, on behalf of myself, say you made it really, really easy for me. So I'll open by first taking us to this. So Heather did this for us. If everyone can take a good look, and I'm sure you have had some time, just check yourself and make sure what is there is what you signed up for. And then, as Mrs. Con said, some committees like the Titirangi, Sport Gisp, and those arrangements have changed over the last term. So she has updated this other appointments as well. And also, I forgot in the last one to add Councillor Telfer to the rural and provincial sector. So it looks all good to me, but I am open to questions and queries if anyone have. Otherwise, do I have a mover for our committee structure and our committee appointments? Moved by Councillor Wharehinga. Seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Telfer.
Just clarifying, we all as councillors have the right to attend any of these, is that correct?
So you can go to any council meeting as a councillor.
But you don't have a vote on that?
No,
Okay.
but you. So there are a few, like the appointments committee, or that's an exclusive, what's the word? It's an interview panel, so not that, but all our committees, like the bylaw submissions, you can attend. District licensing, not, because that's also a committee. Conduct review, we are never going to do. Regional transport, waste management, joint management. So yes, council meetings are open for councillors to attend, but the committee with voting rights will vote. And as you can see, I'm part of all committees. So the mayor is a member, a voting member of all committees except the regional transport and the wastewater committee, because those are committees by statute, different. Yeah, all good. Councillor Wharehinga.
Just a point of clarification, as the mover, just for point 6, do we have to name the councillor, because it has Councillor X? It isn't, so yeah, so but I don't have to name that specific person for this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, councillors, so it is my plan that we have a mover, Councillor Wharehinga, we have a seconder, Councillor Foster. So we have quite a few appointments here that I will go through. Number 1, we're on page 154, confirm the establishment of our committees and subcommittees set out in attachment 1. Confirm the appointments of members and chairs to the committees and subcommittees of the authority as set out in attachment 2. So we have our 2 attachments that were tabled today. Appoint councillors to the various roles outside of council as per attachment 3. Where's it? Oh yeah, so this is attachment just telling us the purpose and the structures, which I sent out to everyone earlier. Then the other attachment is the one that Heather filled in, and this is the out of council appointments. Then confirm the appointment of Bruce as the independent chair of our audit and risk committee. Yes. Reaffirms the membership of the Waiapu Catchment Hearings Committee as per the JMA between Gisborne District Council and the Runanga. Yes. I'll just change some words soon. Confirms that the trustees for the Gisborne District Trust Relief will be the mayor and Councillor Tibble. So we'll just add Councillor Tibble in there. Request that the delegation manual be updated with changes in membership numbers and any changes to the structure that have been agreed and reported. I just want to change in number 1 and number 2. It is not territorial authority, it is unitary authority. So if that wording can just be changed in 1 and 2. Everything clear for everyone? So if Councillor Telfer.
Could I just have a Bruce Robinson? Can we just have a background of how he fit in this position?
Yes.
And what his background?
Yes, so we'll send his CV around. So Bruce was the independent chair of our audit and risk committee in the last term. If you can, and Nadine, he used to be the assistant auditor general.
So he used to work at the office of the Auditor General as Your Worship says, as the Assistant Auditor General. He is on a number of other independent audit and risk committees for councils. So he's got significant experience in this area as an independent chair.
And he's also a professor at Otago. He brings a depth of knowledge to our audit and risk committee, which is second to none. Any other questions or queries? Councillor Older.
Yes, Your Worship. Is it normal that we do have an outside chairman for things like this?
It's best practice. So we introduced it at the last term when it's a best practice to have an independent chair of your audit and risk. I don't chair it. We get someone with that extensive audit and risk experience, and you will see the level of scrutiny and different thinking that he brings to this table. Councillor Pahuruhuriwai.
Tina, Your Worship. Just wondering if you did manage to fill in all of the spaces that needed to be filled for everything.
Thank you so much. People were so enthusiastic and we were totally oversubscribed. So I'm very, very happy with the enthusiasm and the wanting to serve from our councillors. Any more questions or queries? If not, so because we are talking about people today, we don't say aye, we raise our hands like we did when we appointed the deputy mayor. So all in favour, it's unanimous, carried. Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, I saw an email earlier from Heather. We're on page 166 talking about our meeting schedule, and Heather will send our draft, and it is very draft because I'll talk a little bit about it in a few minutes. Our meeting schedule planned for next year, which we will then adopt when in December. Thank you. So we will send that out. But what we're dealing with today is just to make sure we have our meeting schedule for the next while. So you can see our audit and risk is at the end of this month, and our civil defence on the 23rd. Then we have finance and performance and our operations on the 7th, and our last council meeting for the year is on the 15th of December. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I've just got a question first, actually.
Yes, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that we've got finance and performance, and now we've got operations split into two, that we're going to be cramming that into the afternoon, when we all know that that could be, especially now split into two, it could be quite a big day. And so my reasoning, I'm just querying, we usually put aside Wednesdays and Thursdays, so are we not better to have an operations on a full day? Because with the two separations, it could make them way longer. And yeah, so I've just got to, I know in the afternoon the attention rate is not quite as good as what it is in the morning, and I just am concerned that if we're going after 3 o'clock, it's a long day sitting, and there's a lot of information coming through. So I would actually recommend that we have operations aside on a separate day for finance and performance, but that's just.
Thank you, Councillor Foster, through your worship. We will be doing that in the new year. So these committees this month will be small agendas. So in the new year, it'll be moved to the Thursday full day.
Thank you for that. Any more questions from the floor? It's just covering our meetings for November and December. If not, I'll put it to you, moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you. So now we move to so before we move any further, I do want to acknowledge and invite Bella and our kaumatua. They are here today to support our appointments to our Maraetaha joint steering group, Councillor Ria and Councillor Gregory. So I just want to give you the opportunity, Bella, to do that on your behalf.
Te tahi o nā member o nā kaunihera, Councillor Ria and Gregory. Pena hara mai rātau I te taho rātau o nā komiti o Pāmo o Maraetaha. E tautoko ai rātau, pena hara mai rātau pi kotahitanga ia tātou o nā kōrero pāne ki te wai o Wairake ara i Pāmo. Nō reira, ka mihi atu kia koutou i tūrangi nai nei, hau i unga tēne komiti, na mihi atu kia koutou hoki katoa. Pati atu e whakapai te hura i mo koutou. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. Kia hoki tātou katoa.
Anei mātou ngā moko runa, ana manu. Te muri wai noa, te mamaira. Nō reira, tēnā rākau, te iwi whanui. Kia kotahia, tātou katoa kia kaha. Kia kaha. Mei atu kia koutou mo tēnei wā, tō hui, tuatangi o tēnei, o te tau, o tēnei wā. On behalf of Maraetaha, I'd like to thank the council. We've been working through a process, Maraetaha, and previous councillors. And today we're here to help guide you through a new journey. And so therefore, as part of your new councillor process, helping to support and tautoko the nominees to work alongside us, we've chosen to come along as Maraetaha and demonstrate how the treaty should be working with participation and inpono and manaki, because we did request to have a Māori councillor sitting alongside us. Me mihi atu kia koe, Councillor Gregory, you sat in on one of our meetings in October when Councillor Seymour and Councillor were present. And we're here today to help you, show you that this is what partnership looks like. We're part of the engagement process and helping to work together, and we're here to talk to new councillors. So thank you and enjoy your day.
Bella, we would invite you to have a cup of tea with us. We're going to break for a cup of tea shortly if you're not in a rush. Okay, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure Councillor Ria and Councillor Gregory feel very special that you came today and to support them and to welcome them. Thank you very much. Kia ora. Thanks. Councillors, so now we move to page 168, and from this work that the police do and where over time they apply for temporary alcohol bans for rhythm and vines, and you can see the maps and what was done here. Gary, are you here to answer some? Oh, Vincenzo, welcome. So what I will do is I'll open the paper. Vincenzo, between Gary and yourself, give us the lowdown. And then if there are any questions, just grab a microphone here from Nadine and you can keep that on. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Vincenzo.
Kia ora tātou. Just by way of introductions, my name is Gary McKenzie. I'm the Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Manager here at Gisborne District Council. And beside me is Vincenzo. He's the team leader for the Environmental Health Department. Vincenzo also likes to be referred to as V, easier way to refer to him. So we're here to talk about the paper regards the alcohol bans. I presume the paper has been read, so open for any questions.
Councillor Thompson.
Just in regards to that paper, I didn't see any views from R&B. Have we got a stance from them, what their thoughts are on these alcohol bans?
Just keep the microphone on.
No, at this stage, but they are really welcoming the ban are in place because there is all the area around R&B in the past was used by people to what they call load up, like to drink before going to the. So they are they always are really happy with the bans, and as far as I know, until the last time we had, and until the recent time I spoke with them, they were totally fine with bans actually. Because somehow help also them to organize at the best ways possible and reduce people that can wander in the countryside with with a certain level of intoxication. So it's kind of a win-win situation for them as organizer and for us, I believe, as a community.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson. And then Councillor Ria.
Thank you, Worship. Can you advise us what the cost to council is in implementing these temporary alcohol bans? I've got a two-part question.
Yeah, the cost fluctuated. I can't really give you an exact figure at the moment, but because we are, there is a kind of a balance between ever visibility, so the police can enforce and do the proper job, and also the cost related with that. So at the moment we are evaluating what to do next. There is an opportunity to do digital signage, which have more visibility. And we are working with the stakeholder to understand it, to have a better understanding on the cost. We can update the council if.
We can come back with the cost, but it's minimal just in terms of what we have to do by way of signage, public notice, writing a report for recommendations, and that's about the extent within which we would.
So probably not more than 10K.
Doubt it, yeah.
Second part of your question, or you're all good?
No, I had asked staff to clarify
Yep.
the police data
Yeah.
as to where and when the AIONs took place. An email came through this morning, which is clarified. It is predominantly. The only point I'd make from that is, despite extensive liquor bans, and we've been asked this year to extend it even further, there were still 405 breaches. So to me, that says what we've done, because it's increased for the last 5 years, looking at the data, we're not succeeding in reducing alcohol consumption prior to people entering the venue. And rather than extending the bans further and further geographically, we should be trying something different to reduce alcohol consumption and the culture around that. That's a much bigger issue than what council's forte is. But I'm not in favour of just continually each year extending the fingers where people can't drink, because right now those maps are really extensive. And I do know they seem to capture the museum cafe, but I'm not sure if they still serve alcohol there.
There we go.
And it's excluded the Midway Surf Life Saving Club, which is kind of bizarre because it's construction zone, but go there to drink.
Councillor Ria.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. Just as a resident who resides within the banned area, even though the numbers have increased, the intention that the bans were put up have shown a decrease in things like rubbish and loitering. There's a greater police presence in our small community at Waiherere during that time. And also the levels of those warnings and stuff, some have just been all it takes. So even though they're an offence, some are just a warning to move on, and they will just move on. But definitely in the last 5 years since the restrictions have come into place, the amount of rubbish, because prior to the liquor bans, the rubbish that was littered right along those roadways was just atrocious. So yes, I'm in support of the liquor
Happy to
bans.
move it?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Ria. Councillor Parata.
I'm also happy to second, but I just wanted to make a comment in support of councillor Robinson's point that I do think that we have a massive problem drinking culture in Te Tairāwhiti, and at some point that does need to be addressed. And then also support what councillor Ria is saying in that it does help with littering, it does help with loitering, it does help with violence in the streets, but at some point we may need to look at how we can address the drinking culture in Te Tairāwhiti. How can we make it safer for our neighbourhoods, and how can we work together with police and community to ensure that that happens, not just during R&B time, but all year round.
Thank you for that. Okay, if I have no more questions or queries, I do have a mover, councillor Ria. I have a seconder, councillor Parata. All in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you, Vincenzo. Thank you, Gary. So you guys are staying here for the DLC stuff. So I take you to page 188, councillors. We take this report as read. Are there any questions in regards to the annual report of the District Licensing Committee? Councillor Robinson.
I mean, obviously this is a lost leader because it costs more to activate and we can't seem to, because the fees are fixed, we can't seem to put the costs back on to the applicants. Is there any way we can try to recover some of the costs with this process?
The costs are set by law, but there is a possibility, like say in the report, that the council can create a bylaw and so make a fee, a proper different fee ratio, and then perhaps the things that you can notice on the report was that you have a kind of low in income where the COVID strike. So this figure should change, it should go in and improve, I believe, with the time. And as soon as this financial year ends, we should be able to see a better figure. And perhaps there will be the time to assess if you want move to do a bylaw, which is a quite expensive process.
Councillor Wharehinga.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. Hey, just in addition to Councillor Robinson's question, because I had the same thoughts, right? Is there, so under the new regime, I guess, will that fill that 150K deficit that our community has to fund? Are you envisaging that, or is there any kind of, will that halve that, or?
It's actually, the thing is that there's a requirement that we have a DLC in place, that we have an inspector, that we have a secretary. So there are certain things that we are obliged by law to have it as a community. And again, I believe that this trend will improve in the future. And then if we can see if somehow we can break even at some point.
Yeah.
But and then is, I believe, where the council work start in terms to say, okay, do we want to move with a bylaw, and so we want to increase fees because we believe that that is the way to go, and that is, of course, is not up to us.
Yeah.
And but it's a good point for reflection for the future.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Ria.
Kia ora. My thought was exactly along the same lines, and the possibility of the bylaw or increasing some types of levy or fee, because that deficit after income and expenditure doesn't look well at all, especially when it's around alcohol licensing, something that I don't think every person in Gisborne should be paying for, when not every person in Gisborne enjoys alcohol. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Kia ora.
Okay, moved by Councillor Wharehinga. Do I have a seconder for this paper? Councillor Tibble, thank you. No more questions or queries? All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So councillors, I know people will have a lot of questions in our next paper. So what I usually do is I take the chief executive's report in sections. So it is easier also for our specialist staff to answer the questions. So what I'm going to do is go, the first is the central government updates, which is from the beginning of the report till page 10. So if people have any questions or queries, I know everyone is still just in shock from the RMA legislation that dropped. So I'm going to pass over to Nadine to speak to her paper. Thank you, Nadine, for a very thorough paper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things to note in terms of the report. So since this was produced, we've had the two bills introduced to the House, which were the Natural Built Environment and the Spatial Planning Bill. We've also had the Water Services Bill that will have its second reading soon. We've also had the adverse weather event on Friday, which we haven't been able to provide an update on that at this stage. So there are a few points that are missing in here. We can talk to those as we go through if there are any questions. Just in terms of highlights, just to note that to date, we're tracking on par with what we've projected in terms of our financials. So 7.5 surplus at the end of September. We're still very, very early into the financial year. But in terms of the calendar year overall, we've achieved about $8 million worth of external grants, another maybe 2 million if you count on top of that the TPK investment into our resilience funding. So yeah, so really quite happy with how we're tracking in that space as well, and continue to progress major work streams. So I'll hand it over. Questions.
Okay, Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just do that so I can see better. First question is on page 210 of the report. First, I want to acknowledge the Mayor for inviting the panel to come along to have a workshop with us in regards to the Future for Local Government review. I found the panel really great. I want to applaud the work that staff are doing to keep engaging in this never-ending slog of submissions we have to keep doing to central government. It's a lot of work. In the report, you're talking about making a submission. We also had a conversation with the panel. I just wanted to know, will we be workshopping with councillors in order for us to be able to feed into that submission as well?
Yeah, so the intention is that we will have a workshop, staff will have a workshop with their components in there that impact on personnel, and then there are political aspects that we will workshop as well with you in the new year. The submissions are 28th of February, so in the new year we'll schedule that.
And you just said from the beginning to page 10 of the report. That's right, Your Worship. Taking questions just in that
First
part.
section.
This is page 10 of the report. In regards to the consultation on national direction for plantation and exotic afforestation, in the MPI discussion paper, it says that the response to carbon sequestration is definitely a widespread concern amongst every rural sector landholders. In regards to forestry conversion, due to how massively it incentivizes forestry conversion in the ETS, and is there an ability in your staff submission? The only reason why I'm bringing this up now is because it's a staff submission, and it's a really short time frame for us to be able to kind of feed into it. So I just wanted to ask the question: is there any ability in your staff submission to speak to the plethora of other plants and exotics that also sequester carbon? As part of an overall strategy? I know that there's, like, I've already read the MPI document, and they have a specific definition around forestry. I'm not saying to get rid of the forest. I'm just saying, we need a wider framework, right? We need a wider framework around carbon sequestering that's permissive of being innovative here in the region. So this is my only opportunity to really ask the team this question.
I'll pass that over to Joe, but there's also another submission that is going forward that Her Worship and myself and Ms Noble were part of, as part of other councils with interests that's headed by Lawrence Yule, which covers, I believe, captures some of the components of what you were saying, but Ms Noble might be able to add more.
Ms Noble, thank you.
So through you, Your Worship, yes, we can incorporate that. We don't have much time. The submission is due tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
but
what yeah.
it is already quite wide ranging. So if that's not already covered, we'll make sure we insert an additional point.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ms Noble. Thank you very much, Madam C. Thank you, Richard.
Councillor Telfer, thank you.
Yeah, look, just following on from Josh's, when I'm a little bit lost here as far as the time frame of this. It seems like this is in 4 days' time. Did the previous council discuss this or have input into this? Because I think this is probably one of the biggest things going forward that's going to shape our district for the next 40 or 50 years. And we've already had our day the other day regarding the local government reforms that are coming and the input into that. And part of that was mentioned where one of the recommendations they're making is that local government has input into shaping their own district. So that's around shaping what happens, land use, etc., in your district. So look, I don't think this is something that should be just quickly rushed through. And even though there's timeframes, you know, I think this is something that we really need to spend some time on, because there's not many things we can do in this district that can shape our economy and our social outcomes downstream, which we're actually seeing now from what happened after Bowler in our community. So I just want to really emphasise, can we please, if there's any way of making it as part of that submission, Joe, of actually stalling this so that we can actually have time to have input into it.
So through Your Worship, we will definitely be commenting on the submission period, the fact that it overlapped with local body elections and meant that us and probably many other councils couldn't engage actively with their councillors, which is not very satisfactory.
Councillor Ria.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had an area which I was going to mention a little bit later in the report, which is the biodiversity section, but I think it also fits to this area, and it's around our native bush and the protection of our native bush. I see through a lot of our documents that there's a high focus on riparian areas and on wetlands, but I have not seen anywhere that it gives any protection or greater protection of native and natural forest areas that are currently here in Turanga. So I was reading over some documents from, I think it was last year, that there are only 25 hectares remaining intact of native forest in the lowlands of the region. 14% of the native plants in the region are nationally threatened. 7% of the region is identified as a protection management area and our highest value native vegetation, and only 0.1% of this is protected by covenant. And since 2018, the council has approved the clearance of 2,650 hectares of native bush, including 166 hectares of protection of management areas. So my big concern is that native bush is actually possibly being overlooked in terms of these new bills coming through, and also in the biodiverse statements under the council. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I just want to just mention about the new spatial planning bill that's just supposed to be coming through Parliament before Christmas, and part of that whole the planning bill was another centralising of from councils of our spatial planning. So I just hope that we're going to be in opposition to that, because we want to be in total control of our local spatial planning. The whole idea that we heard on Monday was that they're going to be amalgamating us with other regions for our spatial plan, which is bizarre.
Not us.
Through your worship, no, we're a region on our own. I think it has larger implications for duplication and increased costs through an independent spatial planning committee, but there are significant implications that are coming through with these bills, and we'll walk you through them in a session.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So it's not too, I mean, this is going to be passed before Christmas, apparently.
No, there's a submission process to go through.
Right.
So this is the first bill.
End of
There'll be a
February.
second reading of the bill. There'll be a select committee process as well. So we're not envisioning this to be in place until probably mid or maybe first quarter next year.
Okay, cool.
Okay, everyone ask their questions in section 1. Then we move to our council plans and policy update, which is the climate change, fresh water, dog control, keeping of animals, regional speed, local elections. I am starting on page 216, and it will take us to page 221. So that is
It's a section on council plans and policy updates.
if you have no questions, we move to the next section, which is general management. But before we move to the next section, I just want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to Helen. This is her last council meeting today. Helen, thank you for the journey you've been on with us. I know your team will really miss you. We will miss you. Thank you for the hard work you've put in, and all the best of luck with all your new endeavors. Okay. Civil defence updates. I am going a bit loose today because I'm missing stuff. Yes, civil defence updates. Nadine, thank you for the work your team has done over the weekend. We will have a recap when we have our civil defence meeting in the next while, where we will be able to ask our questions, talk about roles and functions of us. It was something that happened before we were prepared, and that's how life works. So thank you for your team on the ground, and I know work are still happening. So thank you for that. Relationships. We're on page 220. The Waiapu catchment, the JMA, Te Kahui Patu Kaikiri, Ngā Hapu Tokomaru Bay, our tangata whenua co-governance. Any questions in regards of that section? 220. Councillor Pahuruhuriwai, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question about Te Kahui Patu Kaikiri, which is on page 220. In regards to, I guess it's continuation, I'm in favour of this group remaining as a new councillor in the Māori ward. Anti-racism is a huge kaupapa. There is a national action plan against anti-racism that's in the works at the moment that I'm aware of. And I think it's, whilst we're doing an amazing amount of work around tangata whenua, relationships, treaty partnerships, etc., I think it's imperative that we keep an eye on this space and anti-racism, and that we can be a leader again in the tairāwhiti in this particular area. So that's my whakaaro on that.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, we move to our general management, finances. Yes.
Sorry, just scrolling through. Program manager was appointed to Waiapu Kahua in 22. That's happened. Sorry, page what about 223, 221.
221.
That is appointment has been made. Thank you.
Councillor Telford, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make a note of something. With these joint venture co-governance, or how we're going to put them groups. I've noted there's been a couple and that basically haven't met since, there's been meetings cancelled, and like this one hadn't met since August due to constraints and timeframes and whatever. And I've noticed on another one we were dealing with as well. Can we just have some clarification on why these are being put off? Because if we're going to have these and we want to make them work, we have to make sure that people are turning up to actually make it work.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I think you're referring to the co-governance group with tangata whenua. So at present, that's a steering group. There's yet to be a co-governance forum established, and I think you've raised a very, very valid point, Councillor Telfer, and it really highlights, I guess, the current landscape and the demand that we place as a local authority on our treaty relationships at present, and actually the capacity not being there. So this institution is about 170 years old. Our treaty settlements in this region are really 11, 12 years old, and we need to be mindful of that and the demands, I guess, with the, particularly with the amount of reform occurring at the moment. So our treaty partners are really stretched for time, and it is a journey that we're going to have to walk in partnership. And again, with that steering group in particular, it was very foundational, built off the back of the journey that the last council committed to. So it is really us getting the right people in the moving parts together within that partnership spectrum that are going to allow us to be able to progress. And I do acknowledge things do take a bit of time, and we'd love to have things stood up tomorrow, but the reality is just with the capacity constraints across the partnership, and we even experienced that internally, it is a bit of a challenging landscape to navigate, and it will take some time.
Bye-bye, thank you for that. Councillor Parata.
I just wanted to make note of that also, is that if we look at all of the things on the council agenda, we have to consistently engage and get the views of iwi and Māori, hapu and community. So the constraints on te iwi Māori to participate in every single forum and every single issue becomes really, really challenging. So I just want us to be mindful that sometimes the same people are sitting on the same boards at the same things, doing all of the consultation for every single kaupapa, and for that to be noted when we say that things are being deferred or taking a little bit longer, and be mindful that that's actually part of treaty partnership, is understanding the pressures on iwi and our treaty partners to participate in every single conversation.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, we move into page 222, which is about general management, financial reporting. Councillor Rio.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. My part was just around, it was recorded that there was a major injury. That's page 222. There was one notifiable event. I was just wondering what processes have been put in place to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to those.
Thank you, Mr. Bayfield.
Just in terms of reporting, there's a lot more information that we get through the health and safety environment, through the audit and risk report, but just on those matters, they've been fully investigated, and where we can eliminate, that's what we do. The hazard, the risk or the hazard, that's what we do, and otherwise we have mitigations in place. So the two notifiable events for the rolling 12-month period, one was in relation to a vehicle incident with the contractors. We had 2 people seriously injured out on the roads, and they remain off work and are still in recovery. And the other incident was in relation to a cable being struck overhead. Both those matters have been fully investigated, and we work with our contractors very closely to mitigate any future risks around those incidents.
So to just make that observation on those particular ones, they have been our contractors where the issues have arisen. So there's been our team works really closely reminding contractors and ensuring that they have the appropriate qualifications in place to undertake that work.
Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the health and safety issue, I appreciate that you, Nadine, are responsible for anyone injured under your watch. As to our roads in the region, are we in any way responsible for an accident caused by what might be called neglect or insufficient maintenance? Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, thank you.
Through your worship, the roads are not deemed as a place of work unless it's for one of our contractors or one of our staff that are working for us. So they're not under the work safe legislation for people who are driving to and from them because they're not working on that. That's not their workplace. That's just where they're commuting backwards and forwards from. If it's a contractor who is working on the roads, then yes, we are liable.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, I take us to Councillor Pahuruhuruwai.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I appreciate the report on health and safety. I know it's really something that I have in my mind all the time around making sure that our employees are safe in their work, and love the table of that's clear about the extent of the injuries, but also that you're planning to mitigate them. Do we have are our staff insured?
Yep. Yes, we do have insurance. It's more a death or an suffering permanent incapacity to work. So we do have that in place for our employees.
Okay, we move on to page 225. Projects, the pool, township upgrades, playgrounds. Well, I do want to talk about our playgrounds. I do want to acknowledge Lillian for the awesome. I have now gone down quite a few slides, and I do want to acknowledge Lil for the wonderful way you work with our communities, not just up the coast when we were up in Tiniroto. The community love working with you. You make them part of it. They take ownership. So I just want to acknowledge you for the awesome mahi you do on our behalf. Thank you, Lowell. Councillor Ria, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to, at some point, if we could get maybe a short verbal feedback from Lil in terms of what other community upgrades are happening, because all we see on the sheet is this amount is going to this community, this amount is going to this community, but there's no indication in the report what that money is actually going to be put on in those smaller communities. So that would be some useful information. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cranston and then Councillor Wharehinga.
Yeah, I'm on the township upgrades as well. We seem to have got to the end of the sequence and starting again, because I think Maraetaha was one of the early ones in the rollout of the township upgrades, and the allocations were more at that time. So I'm just wondering whether we're going through the same sequence or we're going to actually do some strong prioritisation to actually go for the need where it is, rather than just roll out a sequence of township upgrades on the basis that that's what they were last time.
No.
Ai, through you, Your Worship, and tēnā rā tātou, nau mai haramai ngā mema hau, me ki hoki mai, nau mai ki ngā mema mō o wao mua. Ai, kia ora. So this, when I came on board 3 years ago, townships were sort of all over the place, and I myself have not worked with Maraetaha, so this plan was signed off by the previous council in 2021 in terms of timings of township upgrades. And we've slimmed it down to, instead of every 20 years, every 5 years, we will have a township upgrade. In terms of Maraetaha, 2 years ago, we decommissioned their playground because it was unsafe. And so there was a need to go back and work with the community and restore, but more importantly, plan with them to achieve what the community wants to achieve. Ngā mihi. That doesn't really answer your question, does it?
Yeah, it did remind me of something actually, the decommissioning of playgrounds. Yeah, one I'm very familiar with. I just went over to take my mokapuna over there and it was gone. So, you know, and the community was quite upset about it and nothing's been replaced there. I would think that something like a decommissioned playground wouldn't be part of a township upgrade. I would have thought it would have fallen into some other budget.
I have, no, Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Gregory.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just off the back of Councillor Rear's question, and also kind of, I guess, bringing everybody kind of collectively up to date in regards to the plan. So I completely endorse there kind of being some paper or workshop in regards to what we currently have in plan for the current councils. But I'd like to include, so on page, what page am I on? Page 226, just in regards to the early wins as well. It'll be nice to get like where those are tracking to, what's about to kind of come into the community, all of those kinds of things. So rather than doing them a bit piecemeal, it'll be great to kind of get a collective update for all of us in regards to that, because we will get asked about the shelter, Horota Wakahoe, the one for Maraetaha, the playground in Matawai, replacing that playground where Councillor Cranston took his moko, you know, all of those things. So it'll be, I think it'll do this new table, this new council, good for us to get a steer as to where all of those work programs are at. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Gregory, Councillor Foster, Councillor Pahuruhuruwai.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with regards to page 225, about the woody debris on the beach, was there further debris come down from that recent event, and is there going to be further costs relating to that situation? And I've just got one other question after that.
Yes, and Luawa definitely further wood on, but we hadn't started there, so we were fortunate.
Through Your Worship, we are still assessing the quantum of cleanup required, but yes, Uawa, and still making the assessment, so early days.
Okay, thank you. And also with on page 227 on the Kiwa pools, the date, opening date, is some question about it. Do you have any idea about that? Sort of, is it months or weeks or?
Probably more like, well, we were looking at opening the end of March. We're probably looking into April.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, Councillor Pahuruhuruwai, Councillor Parata.
Yep, thank you. Page 233, Panuki to Titirangi Summit. That's a project for the project on the top of the Titirangi, and the consent was fully notified over a year ago. And we're still, and I'm reading this every report, there's no change whatsoever. So are we going to be, yeah, there's obviously a problem in this, and I'm just wanting to find out where we're going from this, because it seems to be in stalemate at the moment. Thank you.
Through your worship, so that process has reactivated. There have been, through the public notification process, there were a number of submissions, and in terms of the submissions, there was one from Rangawhakara, and we've been working with Rangawhakara through a process of engagement, which was requested, and we're at the point where that re-engagement of the process can go forward. So we're back underway.
Have you got any timelines at all that we might see some progress?
In terms of timelines, we have requested an initial hui, which is hopefully going to happen pre-Christmas, and we'll be able to set the timeframes from that point.
Thank you.
Councillor Pahuruhuruwai, Parata, Telfer.
Tēnā koe, your worship. E mihi ana kia koe lau. Tēnei te mihi mai te rohi o Matakawa me te waiapu kia koe. O ngā mahi ko mahia e koe. Whakapaukaha koe me tō tēma kia pua wai mai a ngā papa tākaro a mo ngā tamariki. He oranga ngā koe mōku te ki te atu i ngā tamariki e tākaro ana. I runga i ngā papa tākaro o te wākainga e mihi ana ki a koutou. Just thanking again Lil for the massive work that she's done. In regards to townships, if I can talk for Whare Kahika, we waited 20 years for a playground and for new toilets. That's a long time. My children are well grown up by now saying, oh, we never got to play on that. Well, it's ready for my mokopuna when they come. But also I've had lots of amazing feedback from the Waiapu community, Te Araro, Whare Kahika, for the work that's done. And I really want to acknowledge it because it hasn't been an easy journey for our communities. And always, you know, changing of staff, knowing who to talk to, who to go to, highly frustrating, especially when you're up to 3 hours away from here. So the fact that you go out to the communities, you work with the communities on the ground, it's not a desktop exercise for you, but you do get out of the office and you go and talk to our whānau. It's very much appreciated, and the mahi you're doing is acknowledged. So te mihi to you and your team. Also, just I wanted to go back to page 225 around again the wood. And there seems to be a concentrated effort on Uwawa, but I want to know if there are plans to clear the other beaches along the coast, and especially those that might be impacting on wāhi tapu sites on Urupa that seem to be severely impacted every weather event. And if any work is being done alongside mana whenua and those rohe to discuss the moving of that wood, it's plain to me that more wood is going to come down. You just need to look at the hills and see the slash. And I can guarantee you that every rain there is going to be more wood. So what is the plan to remove the wood from the hills before it gets into the awa? Kia ora.
Through your worship, the situation with woody debris is complex, and for that reason we have commissioned a piece of work and have a resource on board to develop the policy position, which will set up the approach we take to managing the woody debris and council's position going into the future. At this point, I would say the cleanup of woody debris has been somewhat reactive to storm events that have come in the past. So very much reactive. So the focus is flipping towards a positive approach. Early in the new year, we are engaging a reference group, which does include mana whenua, and we will be talking about what the key outcomes look like and what are the priorities for woody debris cleanup. Given the cost of cleanup, we can't do everything everywhere. So we need to really think hard about how we and where we prioritise, and that policy position will get there for us. So yeah, thank you. And I do appreciate your and we'll take into account your feedback on the coastal beaches.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question? What you can just say, supplementary.
Supplementary.
I saw your move. Supplementary question
Trying to
allowed.
figure out what the word is. Thank you for that. I just, I guess my concern is all the way down the coast to the Ngutuawa of the Waiapu there, and whether or not the communities of those bays all the way down the Waiapu along Tikapa Te Horo, Port Awanui, if those communities have been brought into the conversation, because the wood is severely impacting their ability to take kai from their cupboard. And I'm sure whilst they've been looking at that wood, they're also thinking of solutions, and maybe the cost that you're thinking about is not as big as you think if the communities are involved in helping find a solution. especially with summer coming on, we have a lot of whānau heading back who obviously want to be able to help. They also want to be able to access their kapata kai that they have traditionally weaver. So yeah, that's a suggestion. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Next on my list was Parata, then Ria. Thank you.
Don't need to move the microphone down here. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly feed into that same woody debris conversation, is that perhaps it's worth engaging with these communities to allow them to be self-determining. In every community from Uawa, I think also into Matakawa, there's heavy machinery in every single community. The community could potentially self-manage this. And then also, I think the conversation needs to extend or be workshopped with the contractors that are working on the Māori land that have these, forestry blocks, because that's not best practice to leave blocks that look like that. I'm sure they don't do that on general land, but they're doing it on Māori land. And so I think that conversation needs to extend to contractors about what their social responsibility is beyond their industry practice. But that's actually not what I wanted to say. I just wanted to commend the CE's report. I found it excellent, and I found it informative, but I was hoping that perhaps we could look at what the outcomes are and what the impact of the work it is that we're doing. What we get in this report is a lot of what we're doing and how we're doing it. What it doesn't tell us is what it means, and what the intended outcomes and impacts are for that particular community or for that particular mahi. And I just wonder if it would deepen our conversations at this table if we knew what it is that we were trying to achieve beyond the what. And also, ka nui te mihi kia koe tuahine mua mahi.
Thank you for that. Okay, I have Councillor Ria, then Councillor Telfer.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. This is in regards to woody debris, but not necessarily along our coastlines, and it flows into our next kaupapa here of the business case for the Tairasi Sports Facilities business case. And it's in regards to wakaama. So I did see that the proposal for the facilities business case covers all sporting in Aotearoa, covers all sport codes, but I was concerned for the portion of code that it covers for wakaama specifically. So wakaama is a sport which is enjoyed by hundreds of people here in Turanganui-a-Kiwa and Te Tairāwhiti Whānui, and we've also just brought back at least 50 individual world champion gold medals. And 1 year of designated funding to assist them to put up sheds, I don't think is enough in support of a sport where we are competing at a world level, that somewhere back in the plan, even if we go away from it, there still needs to be something to help progress and grow the world champions that we already have, and to ensure that more world champions come along within that sporting area. And simple things that I've actually heard from some of our wakaama family about the removal of debris from underneath the bridges after flooding, that makes it impossible for them to use the waterways. The times where we have to flush wastewater, that is health and safety issues for our paddlers and our rowers and our swimmers that use that waterway. And also for I had one send me some emails where she has been trying to get somebody to pay some attention to some low-hanging trees which are right next to bridges, which cause a bit of a health and safety issue. So thank you. I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Councillor Telfer. Oh, did you want to respond?
I was just going to say, through Your Worship, that we'll capture those actions and have a look at what can be done there. It's outside the scope of the community facilities strategy, which is more looking at facilities development, but it's certainly something that we can look at.
Look, I'd just like to go back to page 233. It's just a follow on from basically the discussion around the Titirangi Summit and the time frame for the resource consent that it's taking. Look, when I stood for council, this was one of the probably the issues that I prompted me to actually have a crack. And since then, it's probably been the one that I've had the most phone calls about is around this resource consent. Currently dealing with one up the coast, which I've passed on to the contractor, passed on to the mayor. Look, I think if we can seriously make this one of our priorities to actually workshop and see if we can. I know there's a lot of changes which we've had discussed coming with the Resource Management Act and apparently supposed to simplify this whole thing going forward, but we'll wait and see. But I think this is probably one thing that our community and the people that are trying to run businesses in this community is really the biggest problem that they're having. So, you know, taking 2 years to get a consent to do something which is part of having to renew a consent and taking 2 years to try and get it renewed is way out of line. So I think I'd just like it noted. Can we please make this a priority going forward? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Just like to comment on both of those examples that it's not council that's holding up the consent process, so that we're clear.
Thank you. Okay, let us move to the last sections of our report, the last 10 pages where we cover biodiversity, our grant funding, and then also our regional roading activities. Any questions or queries in regards to those last 10 pages of our agenda? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. It's just, yeah, the funding, and I guess it does cross over into projects as well, because the first one is the 1,000-year bridge. Can we get an update where we're at with that? Because this seems to be taking, again, a long time. And and we've got all the funding all there. And I know there's things being made at the moment, but yeah, can we get a completion date or something on this?
We are just looking for a start date at this stage, Councillor Foster. Mr. Wilson, thank you.
Through your worship, so we've met with the contractors this week around the timeframes for construction for the materials off-site, and we'll be updating the completion date once we've been able to lock in our steel fabrication. It is looking like the middle of next year we'll receive the steel. However, the groundworks and things will be happening sooner, but we've agreed the final design with the construction. The artist has agreed the final designs for them to then take through to steel fabrication. So we're just waiting to see, once we've got the timeframe confirmed from the steel fabrication, we'll then be able to tell you when it will be installed. But some of the work will be starting early next year.
Okay, thank you. The next one is on page 241. And that's to do with Hawaii ki Tiranga. The
remediation.
Yeah, remediation, yes, and we've had the funding from our first tier. So what progress are we going to be having on that? And can we get an update of when that might start, and then when the sculpture, which we're waiting, anticipating for so long now to be in place. So when will we likely to see that?
Thank you for that. Ms. Frey.
Through your worship, so we're just awaiting the contract for the Better Off funding. Yeah, got it? Right. Okay, so that's imminent. So we have a working group which is finalising the design, which will be submitted for resource consent, and then will be hopefully underway early next year with that work.
So how long will the remediation take to finish before construction of the sculpture can be installed?
So in terms of the remediation, it is a minimalist approach to disturbing the land. So a lot of the work is about lifting the landscaping and the improvements up above the ground surface. So the key piece is the areas where the sculpture is going into the ground, and they're quite minimal. So it's not anticipated to be a major task at this stage. So it's more of a minimalist contamination
So we might see the sculpture by next year.
I'm hopeful.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Rio. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 241, and it is touched on earlier in the paper, this reference to the Better Off funding, which I did read had been confirmed. Will we be getting a paper back in the new year to outline the timeframes and plan in relation to the compostable waste collection and waste to energy options? Because that's, of all of those, that's the one that I think has major implications for our communities.
Through your worship, you'll have a report back on all of the projects as they progress along. Great, and if that's the one in particular, we'll give you a bit more detail about that one in Operations Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Ria.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to the Better Off funding as well, I see there is provisions for a Marae sustainability program for in the amount of $1 million. I also noted further back in the report that there is also funding for civil defence in terms of marae and what marae can provide. And I also just wanted to suggest that if marae, because we have had this korero before in our training, that if marae and certain halls in especially rural areas are going to be the designated safe place for in terms of civil defence and in terms of the marae sustainability, that possibly we also look to consider that those areas which will essentially look after communities if anything was to happen in terms of major weather events and things like that, that the possibility of each of those places receiving free water tanks under Better Off funding, because we have made provisions for things like tents and bedding and food, but there is no provision that in the instance that it gets cut off, where does the water come from? So in order to look after those small communities, how do our marae, how do our town halls, how do they do that if they don't have a water tank in a serious situation like that? Kia ora.
Kia ora, through your worship, the Marae Sustainability Program is to be, so currently the iwi chief executives are working through how they're going to slice and dice that. So essentially it was a project that they had identified as one of their priorities. So we've handed it over to them to come back with what the scope of that is, and we can pass back your comments in terms of that priority.
Councillor Cranston, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. With the farm environmental plans, they were required by 31st of May 2021, a year and a half ago. It states that there's 82 have been received, but they're engaging with people to meet the shortfall. What kind of shortfall is there? Oh, sorry, page 237.
237.
Yeah, so the shortfall of still waiting.
Who are commenting on farm environment plans?
Through your worship, I would have to come back to you with that number.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Information will come back.
I'll come
us.
back to you with that number.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fray. Any other questions or queries? Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Just one on page 236 with regards to integrated management, catchment management. There's some funding from MPI that was going to be announced at the end of October there. Just wondering whether that's happened.
Ms. Fray, thank you.
Through your worship, it's looking promising, and we are getting confirmation over the we were hoping to get confirmation last week, but it's on its way. It is looking promising.
Councillors, Councillor Wharehinga.
I just would like to move the report and thank the CE for a really great report.
Thank you for that. Just give me a moment. Do we have a seconder? Question? Both, seconded by councillor Pahuru-Huriwai, and a question.
I do want to thank the C for a really great report, really easy to read as well. And I'm sure behind all of that, there's a whole lot of work that's on. And I just want to acknowledge the work that's currently being done on East Cape Road and up and around our region after the extreme weather events. Thank you, Dave and your team. I know that we'll be discussing this further when we have our rating committee, but just also acknowledge those whānau that are still without a road down to Whareponga, our Tūwaipiro, and you know, I just really feel for them and the situations that we've got and the climate that we're working with. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Look forward to having the broader discussion when we have our huiina soon. Yeah, so ka nui te mihi kia koutou, and thank you, Nadine. Happy to second your report.
Thank you for that. I just want to reach out to councillor Tupara and ask, because he had only one screen, that's why we can't see him. But I did text to ask if I don't see a hand going up now, councillor Tupara, I assume you do not want to ask a question. Oh, did I see something? No, I didn't. I was just testing to see if everyone's awake. Hey, moved by councillor Wharehinga, seconded by councillor Pahuru-Huriwai, all in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you for being part of our first council meeting today. I declare our council meeting closed, and we are going to have a cup of tea together. Thank you.